Everyone gasped when they saw the dog on the 7th floor balcony. Then something shocking happened. Barnaby, a golden retriever puppy with fur the color of honey and eyes like melted chocolate, was the newest resident of the bustling city apartment building. He had arrived just a week ago, a tiny ball of fluff in the arms of his new owner, Mrs. Eleanor Davis, a kind-faced widow in her late 70s. Eleanor's apartment, on the 7th floor, was a cozy haven amidst the city's clamor. It was filled with the comforting scent of lavender and old books, and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Barnaby, with the boundless energy of a puppy, had quickly made himself at home, turning Eleanor's quiet routine upside down. His days were filled with playful antics, chasing his tail, pouncing on imaginary foes, and gnawing on anything within reach. Eleanor's neatly arranged apartment was now strewn with squeaky toys, and her once pristine carpets bore the marks of muddy paws. But Eleanor didn't mind the chaos one bit. Barnaby had filled the silence of her apartment with joyful barks and the patter of tiny paws, and her heart, once heavy with loneliness, now overflowed with love for the mischievous puppy. One sunny afternoon, Eleanor decided to introduce Barnaby to the building's communal balcony, a small, fenced-in space on the 7th floor that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. She carefully opened the balcony door, and Barnaby, his tail wagging excitedly, bounded out, his nose twitching with curiosity. The balcony was a sensory overload for the young pup. The sights, sounds, and smells of the city, the honking of cars, the distant sirens, the scent of exhaust fumes and street food, were a far cry from the quiet serenity of Eleanor's apartment. Barnaby, overwhelmed but intrigued, cautiously explored the new environment, his little paws tapping on the concrete floor. Eleanor, watching him with a smile, leaned against the railing, enjoying the warm sunshine and the gentle breeze. She was lost in thought, reminiscing about her late husband, a man who had loved the city as much as she did, when a sudden sound jolted her back to the present. It was a sharp, metallic clang, followed by a startled yelp from Barnaby. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat as she turned to see the puppy perched precariously on the railing, his tiny paws scrambling for purchase. He had somehow managed to climb onto a small ledge and then, in his exuberance, had leaped onto the railing itself. Now, he teetered on the edge, his big brown eyes wide with fear, the city sprawling beneath him like a dizzying abyss. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She knew she had to act fast, but her legs felt like lead, and her mind was a whirlwind of panic. "Barnaby!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "Stay still, sweetheart. Don't move." But Barnaby, his little body trembling, was already losing his balance. Eleanor's cry was a desperate plea that echoed through the quiet afternoon. Her voice, usually so gentle, was now sharp with fear, a sound that pierced through the hum of the city and reached the ears of those nearby. On the floor below, Mr. Henderson, a retired firefighter with a keen sense of hearing, was watering his prized orchids on his balcony. He paused, his brow furrowed, as he caught the distress in Eleanor's voice. He stepped out onto his balcony and looked up, his eyes widening in horror at the sight of the tiny puppy teetering on the railing above. Across the hallway, Mrs. Rodriguez, a young mother with a baby strapped to her chest, was trying to soothe her crying child. She, too, heard Eleanor's cry and rushed to her balcony, her heart pounding in her chest as she saw the unfolding drama. The news of the puppy in danger spread like wildfire through the apartment building. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered on the balconies and at the windows, their faces etched with worry, their voices a murmur of concern. Eleanor, meanwhile, was frozen in place, her eyes glued to Barnaby. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to reach out and grab him, but she knew that any sudden movement could startle him and send him plummeting to the ground below. "Barnaby, sweetheart," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, come back." But Barnaby was beyond hearing her pleas. He was paralyzed with fear, his little body trembling, his eyes wide with terror. The city noises, once a source of curiosity, now seemed like a cacophony of threats, and the ground below, a dizzying expanse of concrete and steel. Mr. Henderson, his firefighter instincts kicking in, sprang into action. He grabbed a long broom from his apartment and rushed back to his balcony, extending the broom upwards towards Barnaby. "Hold still, little fella," he called out, his voice firm but reassuring. "I'm gonna get you down." But Barnaby, his senses overwhelmed, shied away from the broom, his whimpers growing louder. Eleanor, watching helplessly, felt her heart clench with fear. She knew that time was running out. Just then, Mrs. Rodriguez, her baby still strapped to her chest, appeared on the balcony next to Eleanor. She had a blanket in her hands, and her eyes were filled with determination. "Mrs. Davis," she said, her voice calm and steady, "we need to create a safety net. If he falls, we need to catch him." Eleanor, her mind clouded with panic, looked at Mrs. Rodriguez with a glimmer of hope. Together, they quickly spread the blanket out, holding it taut between them, their eyes fixed on the terrified puppy above. The crowd below watched with bated breath, their collective anxiety hanging heavy in the air. The city, usually a symphony of noise and movement, seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the puppy's whimpers and Eleanor's desperate pleas. And then, in a heart-stopping moment, Barnaby lost his grip. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Barnaby's small form hung suspended in the air, his eyes wide with a primal fear that mirrored the collective gasp of the onlookers. Then gravity took over and he plummeted downwards, a tiny golden blur against the backdrop of the towering city buildings. Eleanor's scream tore through the tense silence, a raw, guttural sound of pure terror. Mrs. Rodriguez, her maternal instincts kicking in, lunged forward, her arms outstretched, the blanket billowing beneath her like a makeshift safety net. The crowd below erupted in a chorus of gasps and cries. Some shielded their eyes, unable to bear witness to the impending tragedy, while others craned their necks, their hearts pounding in their chests. Mr. Henderson, his face grim, braced himself on his balcony, ready to assist if needed. He knew the fall from that height could be fatal, even for a small puppy, but he held onto a sliver of hope, praying for a miracle. As Barnaby fell, his small body tumbling through the air, time seemed to slow down. The city noises faded into the background, replaced by the whooshing of the wind and the frantic beating of his own heart. He closed his eyes, bracing for the impact. But the impact never came. Instead, he landed with a soft thud, enveloped in the folds of the blanket held taut by Mrs. Rodriguez and Eleanor. The force of the fall knocked them off their feet, sending them sprawling onto the balcony floor. But they clung to the blanket, their bodies forming a protective cocoon around the puppy. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd. People emerged from their apartments, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and relief. Some clapped, others cheered, and a few even shed tears of joy. On the balcony above, Eleanor and Mrs. Rodriguez lay tangled in the blanket, their bodies aching, their breaths ragged. But as they looked at each other, their eyes met, and a wave of relief washed over them. They had done it. They had saved Barnaby. Carefully, they untangled themselves from the blanket and checked on the puppy. Barnaby lay still, his eyes closed, his tiny chest rising and falling shallowly. Eleanor gently scooped him up in her arms, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and overwhelming love. "He's alive," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "He's alive." Mrs. Rodriguez, her own eyes brimming with tears, nodded in agreement. "He's a miracle," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The balcony door opened, and Mr. Henderson rushed in, his face etched with concern. He knelt beside Eleanor, checking Barnaby's pulse and breathing. "He seems okay," he said, his voice gruff but reassuring. "But we need to get him to a vet, just to be safe." Eleanor nodded, her eyes never leaving Barnaby's small form. She knew that Mr. Henderson was right. Barnaby had survived a fall that could have easily killed him, and she needed to make sure he was truly all right. As they made their way out of the apartment building, surrounded by a crowd of concerned neighbors, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. In the heart of the bustling city, amidst the towering buildings and the constant hum of traffic, a community had come together to save a tiny puppy. And in that moment, she knew that she and Barnaby were truly home. The lobby of the apartment building buzzed with a nervous energy as Eleanor, cradling Barnaby in her arms, emerged from the elevator. A small group of residents had gathered, their faces etched with concern, their voices hushed with worry. "Oh, Mrs. Davis, how is he?" Mrs. Goldstein, a frail woman with a kind smile, asked, her voice trembling. "He's alive," Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. "But we're taking him to the vet, just to be sure." Mr. Henderson, who had insisted on accompanying Eleanor, gently took Barnaby from her arms. "I'll carry him," he said, his voice gruff but gentle. "You look like you could use a moment to catch your breath." Eleanor nodded gratefully, her legs still shaky from the ordeal. She leaned against Mrs. Rodriguez, who had also come down to offer support. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Mrs. Rodriguez smiled warmly. "We all helped," she said. "This little guy has the whole building rooting for him." As they stepped out onto the street, a taxi pulled up, summoned by one of the residents. Mr. Henderson carefully placed Barnaby in the back seat, and Eleanor slid in beside him, her hand gently stroking the puppy's fur. Mrs. Rodriguez promised to keep everyone updated and waved goodbye as the taxi sped away towards the nearest animal hospital. The ride to the hospital was a blur of anxiety and silent prayers. Eleanor kept her eyes fixed on Barnaby, his small body still and limp in her arms. She prayed that he hadn't suffered any internal injuries, that his playful spirit hadn't been extinguished by the terrifying fall. At the hospital, they were ushered into an examination room, where a young veterinarian, Dr. Lee, greeted them with a calm and reassuring smile. She gently took Barnaby from Eleanor and began a thorough examination, her face etched with concentration. Eleanor and Mr. Henderson sat in tense silence, their eyes following Dr. Lee's every move. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock amplifying their anxiety. Finally, Dr. Lee straightened up, a small smile playing on her lips. "Well," she said, "it seems Barnaby here is a very lucky puppy." Eleanor's heart leaped with relief. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He has a few bruises and a minor sprain in his right leg," Dr. Lee explained, "but nothing that won't heal with time and rest. Considering the fall he took, it's a miracle he's not more seriously injured." Eleanor let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you so much." Dr. Lee smiled warmly. "He's a tough little guy," she said, "and he has you to thank for that. Your quick thinking and the help of your neighbor saved his life." Eleanor nodded, her heart filled with gratitude for Mrs. Rodriguez and the entire community that had rallied around her and Barnaby. She knew that she would never forget this day, the day her little puppy had cheated death and brought an entire city block together. Back in the familiar comfort of her apartment, Eleanor settled Barnaby onto a soft blanket on the floor, his injured leg carefully bandaged. He whimpered softly, his eyes still clouded with fear, his usually playful tail lying limp. Eleanor's heart ached for him, the memory of his near-death experience still vivid in her mind. The apartment, once filled with Barnaby's playful energy, now felt eerily quiet. The silence was broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the distant sounds of the city filtering through the closed windows. Eleanor sat beside Barnaby, gently stroking his fur, whispering soothing words. "It's all right, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice soft and reassuring. "You're safe now. Mama's here." But Barnaby remained withdrawn, his body trembling slightly. The trauma of the fall had left its mark, and the once fearless puppy was now a shadow of his former self. Eleanor knew it would take time and patience for him to heal, both physically and emotionally. Over the next few days, Eleanor dedicated herself to Barnaby's recovery. She showered him with love and attention, coaxing him to eat, encouraging him to take gentle walks around the apartment, and reading to him from her favorite books. She even slept on the floor beside him, her hand resting on his small body, offering him comfort and reassurance. Slowly, Barnaby began to respond. He started wagging his tail again, albeit hesitantly, and his eyes regained some of their sparkle. He ate with more enthusiasm, and his whimpers subsided. But the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the terrifying fall. One evening, as Eleanor was reading to Barnaby, a loud clap of thunder shook the apartment. Barnaby flinched, his body trembling, his eyes wide with panic. He scrambled towards Eleanor, burying his head in her lap, whimpering uncontrollably. Eleanor's heart ached for him. She held him close, whispering soothing words, her hand gently stroking his fur. She knew that the trauma of the fall had left him with a heightened sense of fear, and any loud or sudden noise could trigger a panic attack. "It's just thunder, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice calm and reassuring. "It can't hurt you. You're safe here with me." But Barnaby's fear was palpable. He clung to Eleanor, his body shaking, his whimpers echoing through the quiet apartment. Eleanor held him tight, her own tears falling freely. She knew that his recovery would be a long and challenging journey, but she was determined to be there for him every step of the way. As the storm raged outside, Eleanor sat on the floor, cradling Barnaby in her arms. She looked out the window at the city lights, now blurred by the rain, and thought about the fragility of life, the unexpected turns it could take. She had almost lost Barnaby, her beloved companion, her source of joy, but she had also witnessed the kindness and compassion of her community, the strangers who had come together to save her puppy. In that moment, Eleanor realized that she was not alone. She had Barnaby, her furry companion, and she had her neighbors, her city family. And together they would help Barnaby heal, overcome his fears, and rediscover the joy of life. Word of Barnaby's accident spread quickly through the building. The residents, who had witnessed the terrifying fall, were eager for news of his recovery. Eleanor's apartment door saw a steady stream of visitors, each bearing gifts and well wishes for the little puppy. "Mrs. Goldstein arrived with a homemade chicken soup, just what the doctor ordered for both of you," she said with a wink. "Mr. Henderson, the retired firefighter, brought a soft, plush toy, a firefighter teddy bear complete with a tiny helmet, to remind him of his brave rescuers," he said with a gruff smile. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, juggling her baby and a bouquet of sunflowers, found time to visit. "These are for you, Mrs. Davis," she said, "for being so strong." Her baby, now quiet and curious, reached out chubby fingers towards Barnaby, who, still timid, offered a tentative lick in return. The outpouring of support surprised and touched Eleanor. In the anonymity of the city, she had always kept to herself, her grief a private burden. But now, she found herself surrounded by a community, their concern genuine, their kindness a balm to her wounded spirit. One afternoon, a knock on the door revealed a visitor Eleanor hadn't expected. A young woman with bright eyes and a warm smile introduced herself as Sarah, a veterinary student who lived on the 5th floor. "I heard about Barnaby," she said, "and I wanted to offer my help. I have some experience with animal rehabilitation, and I'd be happy to assist in any way I can." Eleanor, initially hesitant, found herself drawn to Sarah's genuine concern and her obvious love for animals. She agreed to let Sarah visit regularly, and soon Sarah became a fixture in the apartment, her gentle presence a calming influence on both Barnaby and Eleanor. Sarah brought with her a wealth of knowledge and a gentle touch. She showed Eleanor how to massage Barnaby's injured leg, how to encourage him to play, and how to help him regain his confidence. She also brought with her stories of other animals she had helped, tales of resilience and recovery that filled Eleanor with hope. Under Sarah's guidance, Barnaby's progress was remarkable. He started to play again, chasing his tail with renewed vigor, and his fear of loud noises gradually subsided. He even ventured onto the balcony again, though now he stayed well away from the railing, content to sit beside Eleanor and watch the city below. But the most significant change was in Eleanor herself. The shared experience of caring for Barnaby had forged a bond between her and Sarah, a friendship that transcended the age gap and the circumstances that had brought them together. They spent hours talking, sharing stories and laughing together. Eleanor found herself opening up to Sarah, confiding in her about her grief, her loneliness, and her fears. Sarah, in turn, listened with empathy and understanding. She shared her own dreams and aspirations, her passion for animals, and her belief in the power of human connection. Eleanor, who had long felt isolated in her grief, found in Sarah a kindred spirit, a friend who brought light and laughter back into her life. As the weeks passed, Eleanor's apartment was no longer filled with just the echoes of her past. It was now a place of healing, of shared laughter, and of newfound friendship. And at the heart of it all was Barnaby, the little puppy who had not only survived a fall but had also brought together a community and opened Eleanor's heart to new possibilities. As summer ripened into autumn, a sense of normalcy returned to Eleanor's life. Barnaby, fully recovered from his fall, was once again a whirlwind of energy, filling the apartment with his playful antics. The balcony, once a place of terror, was now his favorite spot for sunbathing and birdwatching. Eleanor, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her friendship with Sarah blossomed, bringing laughter and companionship into her days. They went for walks in the park, visited museums, and shared meals together, their conversations weaving a tapestry of shared experiences and mutual respect. But life, as Eleanor knew, was full of unexpected turns. One crisp October morning, a letter arrived, bearing the official seal of the city council. With trembling hands, Eleanor opened it, her heart sinking as she read the contents. The letter informed her that the apartment building was slated for demolition, a victim of the city's relentless pursuit of progress. The news hit Eleanor like a thunderbolt. This apartment, her home for over 40 years, held a lifetime of memories, of laughter and love, of loss and grief. It was where she had raised her children, where she had shared her life with her beloved husband, and where she had found solace in the company of Barnaby. The thought of leaving, of starting over, filled her with dread. Where would she go? What would become of her memories, her belongings, her life? And what about Barnaby? Would he be able to adapt to a new environment after all he had been through? Overwhelmed by the news, Eleanor sought comfort in Sarah's company. Sarah, ever the supportive friend, listened patiently as Eleanor poured out her fears and anxieties. She offered words of encouragement, reminding Eleanor of her strength and resilience, her ability to overcome adversity. "We'll figure this out together," Sarah assured her, her voice firm and reassuring. "We'll find you a new home, a place where you and Barnaby can be happy." Eleanor, her heart heavy but her spirits lifted by Sarah's unwavering support, nodded in agreement. She knew that she couldn't fight the inevitable, but she also knew that she wasn't alone. She had Sarah, her newfound friend, and she had Barnaby, her loyal companion. Together, they would face this new challenge, this unexpected turn in the road, and find a way to create a new home, a new haven filled with love and laughter. The news of the impending demolition sent ripples of anxiety through the entire building. Residents, many of whom had lived there for decades, faced the daunting prospect of uprooting their lives, leaving behind familiar comforts and cherished memories. Eleanor, despite her initial despair, found herself drawn into the shared struggle. She attended community meetings, listened to the concerns of her neighbors, and offered words of comfort and support. She shared her own anxieties, her fears of the unknown, but also her determination to find a new place to call home. Sarah, ever resourceful, took on the role of researcher and advocate. She scoured the city for suitable apartments, negotiated with real estate agents, and helped elderly residents navigate the complexities of relocation assistance programs. She became a beacon of hope, her energy and optimism a source of strength for the entire community. One evening, as Eleanor and Sarah were poring over apartment listings, a thought struck Eleanor. "Sarah," she said, her voice hesitant, "what if we looked for a place together?" Sarah looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Together?" she repeated, a smile slowly spreading across her face. "You mean, as roommates?" Eleanor nodded, a shy smile gracing her lips. "I know it might seem strange," she said, "but I enjoy your company and I think Barnaby does too. And besides," she added, her voice gaining confidence, "it would be nice to have someone to share this new chapter with." Sarah beamed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she exclaimed. "We could find a place with a garden for Barnaby, and maybe even a spare room for when my sister visits." The decision, once voiced, felt surprisingly right. Eleanor, who had long cherished her solitude, found herself embracing the idea of companionship, of sharing her life with someone who brought joy and laughter into her world. The search for a new home took on a renewed sense of purpose. They visited apartments with spacious balconies, toured charming houses with cozy gardens, and explored neighborhoods with tree-lined streets and vibrant community centers. They debated the merits of different layouts, argued playfully over color schemes, and envisioned a future filled with shared meals, laughter, and the comforting presence of Barnaby. Through it all, the anxiety of leaving her old home gradually gave way to anticipation for the new adventures that awaited. Eleanor realized that home wasn't just a place, it was a feeling, a sense of belonging and connection. And she knew, with a certainty that warmed her heart, that she was creating a new home, not just for herself and Barnaby, but for Sarah as well. They were a family now, bound not by blood, but by shared experiences, mutual support, and the love for a mischievous golden retriever who had brought them together. The move was a bittersweet symphony of packing and parting. Eleanor, surrounded by boxes filled with a lifetime of memories, felt the weight of the past pressing down on her. Each object she touched, each photograph she unearthed, evoked a flood of emotions, a poignant reminder of the life she was leaving behind. Sarah, sensing Eleanor's melancholy, took on the role of gentle cheerleader. She brought in boxes, organized belongings, and kept the atmosphere light with her cheerful chatter and infectious laughter. Barnaby, ever attuned to his human companions, offered his own brand of support, nuzzling against Eleanor's legs and offering a comforting presence. The new apartment, located in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, was a world away from the bustling high-rise Eleanor had called home for so long. It was a charming two-story house with a small garden, a haven of peace and tranquility. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the hardwood floors and the freshly painted walls. Eleanor, initially hesitant, found herself drawn to the warmth and charm of the place. The garden, with its blooming roses and chirping birds, was a welcome respite from the city's concrete jungle. Barnaby, with his boundless energy, explored every nook and cranny, his tail wagging excitedly. Sarah, ever practical, took charge of unpacking and decorating. She arranged furniture, hung curtains, and filled the house with her own personal touches, colorful throws, vibrant artwork, and potted plants. The house, once empty and unfamiliar, gradually transformed into a home, a reflection of their shared tastes and personalities. But even as they settled into their new surroundings, the past continued to cast a long shadow. Eleanor, surrounded by familiar belongings, found herself drifting into memories, reliving moments of joy and sorrow, of love and loss. The ghost of her old life lingered, a constant reminder of what she had left behind. One evening, as Eleanor sat by the window, gazing at the sunset, a wave of sadness washed over her. She missed her old apartment, her neighbors, the familiar rhythm of her life. She missed her husband, his gentle smile, his comforting presence. Sarah, sensing Eleanor's mood, sat beside her, offering a comforting hand. "It's okay to grieve," she said softly. "It's okay to miss the past. but don't let it hold you back from embracing the present. Eleanor, her eyes brimming with tears, nodded in agreement. She knew that Sarah was right. The past was a part of her, but it didn't define her. She had a new life now, a new home, a new friend, and she had Barnaby, her constant companion, her furry reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the garden, Eleanor felt a sense of peace settle over her. She was home, not in the place she had known for so long, but in the company of those she loved, in the warmth of their shared connection. The past might linger, but the future beckoned, filled with new possibilities, new adventures, and the promise of a life filled with love and laughter. Life in the new house settled into a comfortable rhythm. Eleanor, no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past, embraced the present with a renewed sense of purpose. The garden became her sanctuary, a place where she could nurture her love for nature, tending to her roses and herbs, watching the birds flitting among the branches. Barnaby, ever the adventurer, thrived in his new surroundings. The garden was his playground, a place where he could chase butterflies, dig for imaginary treasures, and bask in the warm sunshine. He also became a beloved member of the neighborhood, his friendly demeanor and playful antics winning the hearts of young and old alike. Sarah, juggling her veterinary studies with her newfound role as housemate and friend, brought a vibrant energy to the household. She filled the house with laughter, her stories of animal encounters and quirky classmates providing endless entertainment. She also became Eleanor's confidant, their conversations weaving a tapestry of shared experiences, dreams, and aspirations. One crisp winter evening, as they sat by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa, Sarah shared some exciting news. "I got accepted into the animal rehabilitation program," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's a dream come true." Eleanor beamed, her heart swelling with pride. "That's wonderful, Sarah," she said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "I'm so proud of you." Sarah's face glowed with happiness. "I couldn't have done it without you and Barnaby," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've both been such a support." Eleanor smiled, her heart warmed by Sarah's words. She had always thought of herself as the one receiving support, but she realized that she had also given something in return, a sense of belonging, a shared history, a home filled with love and laughter. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between them deepened. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories, their laughter echoing through the house, their shared joy a testament to the enduring power of friendship. One sunny spring afternoon, as Eleanor sat in the garden, watching Barnaby chase a butterfly, a sense of contentment washed over her. She had faced loss, overcome fear, and embraced change. She had found a new home, a new friend, and a renewed sense of purpose. She looked at Sarah, who was laughing at Barnaby's antics, her face radiant with joy. She looked at Barnaby, his golden fur gleaming in the sunlight, his tail wagging with abandon. And she realized that she had everything she needed. Life, she knew, was a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, love and loss. But it was also a tapestry of resilience, of unexpected connections, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the unconditional love of a mischievous golden retriever, Eleanor felt truly blessed. The story of Barnaby's fall from the balcony had become a legend in the neighborhood, a tale whispered with a mix of awe and gratitude. It was a story of a puppy who had cheated death, a community that had come together, and an elderly woman who had found a new lease on life. But most importantly, it was a story of love, in all its forms, the love between a woman and her dog, the love between friends, and the love that binds a community together. And in the end, it was love that had triumphed, love that had healed, love that had brought them all home.